Hi, I'm Will Rondon, Cloud Advocate with IBM. And how many times have you called into your customer service agent, given them all your information like your name, date of birth, account number, and then once you tell them your actual problem, they transfer you to another agent, who then asks you the same exact questions. Can you give me your name, date of birth, account number? Like if that first conversation had never really happened. Well, this is an example of poor data governance. And highlights how the inefficient sharing of data and permissions in a company can have an impact on you as a customer. So let's take a look at that customer service example and put it in the context of a bank, and think about how that information got into the hands of the customer service agent in the first place. And it all starts with a central repository for data. And this central repository has all different types of data flowing into it, from the website or the mobile app, where you as the customer fill out information. So from the central repository, we can have different types of information being filled out by you as the customer. Some of it can be non-confidential, like your name or your address, while some of it can be confidential information that you don't want shared, like your social security number or your account number. Data governance is about protecting this information because it doesn't just stay here, it flows to other departments. So going back to that example, it can flow to the customer service department, or the marketing department, or the loans department, and so on. So going back to data governance, it's about allowing the sharing of this information from that central repository to different departments without exposing important information from you as a customer. And one of the ways that we can do this in an automated fashion is through a data governance framework. This framework has three main components. The first being a policy. The second being rules to implement this policy. And then the third component being classification of these rules. So let's break down each of these pieces through this customer service example. The first being the policy, right? If this was a bank, they would either have an internal data protection policy they're trying to put in place or be following a national guideline like GDPR. And this data policy can then be further broken down into rules, specific rules that make this policy whole. And the two main types of rules are data protection rules, which you may have heard about, and governance rules. So data protection rules pertain to a specific type of data asset. So going back to this example here, you could set a data protection rule specifically tied to social security numbers and censor how it moves throughout an organization. On the other hand, you can use a governance rule and set it up as a written description of how to handle data. So I could write up a paragraph explaining how the customer service department uses its data, or the marketing department, or the loans. So once you have these rules in place, you then want to classify the data that's flowing into the organization. And two ways to classify this data are through business terms or data classes. And they can work together, but just to break them apart here, let's talk about business terms. Business terms can be thought of as the language through which data is interpreted in your organization. So let's say we want to understand utilization rate for our mobile app for each of these departments. But utilization rate is being measured by months in customer service and then days in marketing and loans. So what we can do is set up a business term and call it util for utilization rate and describe how it's measured. So I can say utilization rate is measured in days throughout each of these departments, and in that way I standardize how that data asset is measured between departments. Now, the other way to measure these data sources and data assets is through data classes. And we can understand data classes through metadata. And metadata tells you a summary of what's inside of a data source. So let's say I'm putting in a bunch of spreadsheets into my bank, and I want to understand what's in these spreadsheets without actually opening them. Well, the metadata of this spreadsheet would tell me how many rows it has, how many columns it has, and when it was made. And it can also specifically tell me what's inside of that row by title. So I can understand if there's an account number in that row and censor that account number throughout the movement of that document throughout the organization. So with this framework in place, with the right policy rules and classification in place, I have the base of my framework that can be automated through reference data, which is another word for code that I can implement throughout this architecture and automate the movement of data throughout. But ultimately, we want to tie it back to the customer service example that I talked about earlier. So if I had my customer service agent accessing the same information, but I had a data framework in place, I could set a policy for that customer service agent to follow that breaks down specific rules of that data protection movement or of that data asset movement, and further classify that data asset so the right customer service agent has the right data at the right time without exposing account numbers or social security numbers throughout. But ultimately, this is just one example of data governance, and there's a lot of different examples that may apply to your organization. So feel free to leave a comment below and we can answer how data governance applies in that example. Another way data governance is implemented is through data fabric. So if you're interested in data fabric and how it can operationalize this framework throughout your organization, check out some of our videos. And overall, if you're interested in technology, feel free to subscribe to the channel so you can learn more about how technology and IBM can help you achieve your goals today and tomorrow. So thank you for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.